Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with pure soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. Order today at PureSoapFlakes.com, greenhome.com, Amazon.com, or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
Hey you, podcast listener, this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
And go. Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. I'm the president of Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. You can get an autographed copy of my book if you go to my website, emailrevealer.com. We're going to be talking today about one of those difficult topics that we have here all the time. And there seems to be no light at the end of the tunnel in this kind of situation, but our guest is one of these guys who's working on the light for us. We're going to be talking to Cephus Johnson. He's known as Uncle Bobby, and he's the uncle of Oscar Grant. If you recall this story, Oscar Grant was the young guy who was down there, I think it was Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and had been out partying, and it was on the Bart train station there, and the cop, we'll get into all the details, but you can see there's a homemade video of the cop with his knee down his back and stuff, and then just suddenly the cop pulls out a gun and shoots him, and the young man didn't survive this abuse of power. So we have with us today Cephus Johnson. Mr. Johnson, are you there?
Yes, I am, Ed. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you so much. Before we get into talking about Oscar Grant, your nephew, can you tell us about yourself? Who is Cephus Johnson?
Most definitely. You know what? If I can, just a quick correction,
Sure.
And then I can speak on who I am. Oscar was murdered on January 1st, 2009 at the Fruitvale Station at 2:11 a.m., early morning, New Year's Day. Just wanted to correct that date. It wasn't Christmas, but it was New Year's
Oh, did I
Eve.
say Christmas? I meant New Year's. Okay, I'm losing my mind.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. You did say Christmas.
All right.
But in regards to the question, who is Uncle Bobby? I am the uncle of Oscar Grant, of course. Oscar, the young man, as I mentioned earlier, murdered at the Fruitvale Station on January 1st. His mama is my baby sister, Wanda. So Oscar's mother, of course, Wanda, is my baby sister. Oscar being actually my first nephew. And, of course, the relationship we had was just really tremendous in respect to him and my, of course, my son. Were like best friends, even though they were first cousins. They were good friends with one another, too. But, yes, myself as a veteran, I spent time, of course, in the military in the 70s. Definitely come out the military, went to San Francisco State, of course, studied ethnic studies in the ethnic studies program, and, of course, really investigated who I was through African-American, I should say African studies. I have to more speak in that level. And, of course, eventually became a system engineer out here in Silicon Valley, where I work presently today, tweaking and configuring and doing whatever it is that is needed with computers for the companies, the various companies that I have worked for. So that's pretty much me. And then, of course, the murder of my nephew really put me on a different trajectory of my life, and that is to pursue accountability and transparency according to police agencies throughout this country. Of course, I consider that my life work today. Sadly, I was really introduced to this heinous act through the murder of my nephew, but has really made an attempt in the process of really bringing real systemic change in doing the work that I do.
Before we get into the crime of the murder of your nephew, okay, I know there's a couple of organizations here we want to talk about. Love and Blood Campaign, lovenotbloodcampaign.org, and the FU4JNetwork.org, which stands for Families United for the number 4 Justice. And you have an event coming up here in Las Vegas on the 27th and the 8th, a forum and a workshop. Can you tell us about that real quick?
Yes, I can. So every year, Love Not Blood Campaign, our organization sponsors a conference that happens on a yearly basis. And, of course, our first year happened in Detroit, where we were able to bring 51 families to Detroit, Wayne State University, where we had workshops, a gathering of families impacted by police violence from all over the country together. It was a powerful experience, and then we knew that we needed to do this yearly. And then last year, it was at Merritt College, the Huey Newton Bobby Seale Student Lounge at Merritt College, where the families came. We had 103 families, and again, another just powerful experience. But this year, we decided to kind of keep it on the West Coast and go to Las Vegas. And so this year it is in Las Vegas. Will be held at the Doolittle Community Center. And, of course, that's going to happen on September the 27th and the 28th. The 27th, which is a Friday, will speak specifically to various workshops like Organizing 101, mental health / trauma, the effects of it. And when we lose a loved one, we have a workshop called Advocacy and Legislation, which is really our number one workshop this year. Families chose that as number one. And it may be, I don't want to get into the deals of what I believe caused that, but that's going to be great for a conversation piece later. In addition to those, we have a legal workshop. We have a media workshop. And it looked like we will have a indigenous community workshop because this year appears to be a lot of our indigenous Native brothers and sisters will actually be at the conference. Matter of fact, one of the speakers at the forum that's happening on Saturday is Chief Iron Eyes, who is an attorney, a political figure who really represents our Native community brothers and sisters tremendously with a lot of love. Will be one of our attorney, John Burris, out of Oakland, California, who was a commentator worked with Johnny Cochran, of course, and worked with Johnny Cochran when it came to, not Johnny Cochran, but when it came to, what was the name? Rodney King that was beat. Of course, John Burris was the commentator for that. He will be a panelist also with Chief Iron Eyes. Then we have Patrice Colliers, who is the founder or co-founder of the Black Lives Matter movement that we see today. We have Dr. Malena Abdullah, who is a professor over the Department of Pan-African Studies at Long Beach. I want to say Long Beach. I could be wrong. I apologize for that. But anyway, she's a professor, doctor, well-versed in us, will be a panelist in addition to, of course, myself sitting on the panel. And we have a special surprise guest athlete who will be also sitting on the panel having a discussion concerning athleticism and activism and how this is working out for those that are in the professional field of sports. So it's going to be a fun-filled day, of course, a lot of work, but a very powerful experience.
This sounds very encouraging. I'm going to try and get down there. Maybe we could tape some of these speeches and events and stuff like that, and we can play them on at least on the podcast platforms and make it available to the listeners. That would be great. And also, too, I'll contact you off the air that we can help me get some of these other speakers and stuff to do little quick interviews with me and stuff like that. We can promote your event some more. Now, Oscar Grant. What would Oscar want us to know about himself? He was a young man. He's like 22 years old, right? So he's already a man, What would he want people to know about himself and his history and his contributions to the world? What if he was sitting here right now and says, Uncle Bobby, tell him this?
Yes, I believe that Oscar would want the world to know that first, he was an extremely proud father. He loved his daughter, and that he had a very deep connection, to family, that he loved his family, but also that he was well-loved and had a deep connection to community. And when we speak of community, we talk of community of every hue of the human race loved Oscar, as well as Oscar loved them, his friends. All were considered his brothers, part of his family. He was a very intelligent young man, and he recognized that he had made a couple of mistakes in his life that caused him to experience the mass incarceration that takes place in this country when it comes to our African-American young men. But through that experience, he also recognized that he needed to do something that was right, not just for himself, but for his family and his daughter, more importantly. And he began that journey. And as many who may know the story, his opportunity for redemption was taken away by police officer Johannes Mesley on a night at the Fruitvale Station with his hands behind his back to be handcuffed, laying face down in a prone position, not resisting arrest, and yet officer stands up, shoots him in the back, and then they go like they all say, well, it appeared he was reaching for a weapon. Oscar had no weapon. He had no drugs in his system. He wasn't intoxicated with alcohol. There was no justifiable reason for him to even consider using, as he alleged, mistakenly his taser, but he mistakenly shot Oscar with his gun, so it was a confused on weapon choice, he claimed. But the video itself was shot by commuters that was on the train. that really felt that this was necessary to document because what they saw was so painful for them that they began to record. And so commuters recorded the very essence of the incident, uploaded it to YouTube for millions to see, and of course witnessed the actual heinous murder of my nephew, which we can never forget. And of course, eventually it was portrayed in the movie Fruitvale Station by Ryan Coogler, who also did Black Panther as well as Creed. Ryan Coogler was just a young man, 22 years old, also pained by the murder, and came to the family with the idea about showing how loved Oscar was. And for those who have seen the movie can understand who Oscar was better. And not only that, they can see that not only was he loved by his families, but all the viewers that actually viewed that movie became a part of Oscar's family, and at his demise in the movie itself, most people cry. Most people feel so bad about what happened. They leave the theater in pain and hurt and disgust about this act of police killing us at will, and then justifying it by saying that they either fear for their lives, or we was reaching for a gun, or just something that just seems so unbelievable, but yet they get away with it.
Well, let me ask you this. What is it that caused Oscar to come into contact with the police that night in the first place?
Yes, so of course, those who have seen the movie to know that it was New Year's Eve, so everybody was out just having fun, and it was on the train coming back from San Francisco to fireworks. In the process, a commuter, and this happens all the time, Oscar and an old friend of his had a disagreement. They kind of grabbed each other, and they was tussling. It was a white guy. And they was tussling, and then, the train was what you call a crush load, so it was overpacked with people coming back from the fireworks. So it was no punches thrown. There was no brawl, no fight, no, this and that. But the commuter made the call that there was a black and Latino gang fight on the Bart train, and he feared for his daughter's life. And that caused the train agent, of course, to make a call for the Bart police to come and see if anybody's been hurt, stabbed, or killed in this brawl that this white commuter alleged had occurred on the Bart train. None of that was true. And because the Bart police officer came up, he immediately saw Oscar and his friend standing outside the train because the tussle had been ceased. It was done. But because he had got that call that he had to investigate whether someone been involved in this big old brawl fight, he saw these black guys that he testified to. He went on a hunch, assumed that they might have been the ones involved in this so-called alleged brawl that took place between blacks and Latinos. And not knowing that the guys that Oscar was standing with, two of them were Latino and the other was black. They were all together. And, of course, they weren't in no black and Latino gang fight. But, of course, the officer then asked them to step against the wall. Oscar and his friend steps against the wall. And then he takes down one of Oscar's friends, Michael Greer, because he said Michael Greer took a fighting stance. Yeah. And so he did what you call a hair pull takedown. He grabbed him by his dreads, threw him and tripped him and threw him to the ground. And everybody was shocked. This would really prompt everyone to begin to start recording what was going on. So all this has been documented by commuters. And, of course, Oscar and his friends are against the wall. They asking about a fight. They talking about they don't know nothing about a fight. Nobody's been involved in no fight. We just want to go home, And, of course, the officer used racial epithets, to Oscar. And Oscar responded and said the same thing to him, and eventually he just said, that one and that one, pointed to my nephew Oscar, and then Jackie Bryson are going to jail. Neither one of them wanted to go to jail, so Jackie is kind of really like, what? And so anyway, he's on his knees. He's being handcuffed by Johannes Mersley. As Johannes Mersley finished with Jackie, Oscar gets on his knees to be handcuffed. Instead of Mersley cuffing him, he pushes him down. So Oscar falls to the platform floor but he put his hands out to brace himself. When he does that, he's immediately jumped on and he's rolled over. Well, let me rephrase that. His arms get pinned under his body. Mesley's on his back. Mesley is 6'7", 270 pounds. And Tony Perrone is on his neck, got his knee on his neck. He's choking Oscar with his knee. And he's 6'1", 250 pounds. And he was really built, like he'd taken a lot of steroids. So now Oscar's pinned with 600 pounds of officer on his 150-pound frame. Oscar only weighs 150 pounds, and he's about 5'9", maybe 5'10". So as Mesley is yanking his arms, all the pressure got his arms pinned under his body. This is what Mesley claimed, that Oscar was reaching for a gun. But he's telling Tony Perrone, the officer that's on his neck, that he can't breathe. I can't breathe. Before Eric Gardner, famous cry, I can't breathe. Oscar said the same thing. I can't breathe, because he had his knee on his neck. So Tony Perrone then takes his knee off his neck and reverses his position. It allows Oscar to pull his arms and place him behind his back to be handcuffed like he was trying to do when he was on his knees. Instead, Johannes Mesley stands up, pulls out his service revolver, shoots Oscar's center mass in the back. The bullet goes through his body, hit the platform, comes back up, and penetrates his chest, collapsing his lungs. Of course, my nephew dies from the shot with one bullet, 2 entries. Immediately, Johannes Mesley claimed he thought Oscar was reaching for a gun. He testified that he thought Oscar was reaching for a gun. But then he said because he thought Oscar was reaching for a gun, he meant to get his taser to tase him, when in essence, we know that was just a blatant lie. So that is what happened to Oscar on that night at the Fruitvale BART station at 2:11 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, you're not going to bring a taser to a gunfight, okay? That's right away.
Exactly.
Now, let me ask you something else, though, okay? Now, at the time, the police were placing this young man in handcuffs. What theoretically, what would the charges have been at that point? They showed up. There was no fight. There was no complainant. There was no victim. What would the charges have been at that point to place this young man in handcuffs?
Right. There wouldn't have been no charges. Tony Perrone, the number one officer on the scene, said that he would have just let them go because there was no one hurt according to the so-called brawl or fight that took place. There was no one stabbed. And then it was a question of who was involved in the fight, because if it was just Oscar and his friends that was in this brawl, well, where's the other group at? Right. So there was nothing that he could base his justification for even handcuffing them and taking them down to jail. So, but what ended up happening was that Johannes Mesley and Tony Perrone escalated, created the confusion, created the madness, was overly aggressive, and of course, eventually my nephew Oscar, who was the peacemaker on the platform, even telling commuters to calm down because they cussing at the police officers for acting the way that they were acting and the way they were abusing Oscar and his friends. I didn't say this earlier, but when they put Oscar against the wall, he was kneed in his stomach. He was punched by Tony Perrone. This is all in the video. And you will see that Oscar didn't throw no punch.
No, I've seen it.
He wasn't saying nothing. And, the sad part is that they would have been able to just go home for being abused by a police officer versus being murdered. And, of course, my nephew was murdered.
It almost looks to me, because I haven't watched this recently, but I remember when all this happened, it almost looks like when the cop shot him, he kind of did like an oops kind of thing, like he realized he had messed up. Am I right?
Right. So, right. So that's the interpretation. It's almost like looking at a glass of water, and one of us saying it's half full, and the other says half empty. So his history. See, we don't know and we could talk about the legislation we just got passed, which is really critical about understanding this whole process. But according to what we see on that video, instead of us taking totality of the event, we only look at that instance of what happened when he shot him. And, of course, he put his hands to his head, and his real first impression and his thought was that Oscar didn't have a gun. Not that I made a mistake. He alleged later that he made a mistake, but he didn't have a gun because prior to Oscar, to knowledge, and you asked me hopefully the question concerning AB 1421 or SB 1421, which is right to know. But according to Johannes Mesley's history, he had an enormous amount of altercation with young black men. And prior to Oscar, that night on the platform in West Oakland, a young man was being chased by him. He jumped off the platform, broke his leg when he hit the ground. They go down, they go pat him down. He has a gun on him. So they make the arrest. And then they get this call that there's a black and Latino gang fight at the Fruitvale BART station. They testified, Johannes Mesley and his partner at the West Oakland BART station, that they felt they was going into combat. And so, of course, they rally themselves. They get this guy arrested. They get in their car. They speed over to the Fruitvale BART station. They come up on the platform ready to go to war. And because of that, of course, my nephew Oscar was murdered. And so the totality of the event was that Mesley felt that here we go again, but this time this young man didn't have a gun. So not only was it a big lie that he had said, but he, in his own mind, believed that Oscar had a gun, and he shot him without even really looking to see if he had a gun.
You know, what about the man who originally made the phone call and was concerned about his child? Has he ever been identified?
Oh, yeah, he was identified. He testified in court. And what he testified to, and these are just facts that I'm telling you. The transcripts can be getting and read yourself. He testified that there was such a brawl that all he saw was fists, you know, coming from everywhere. So, of course, the district attorney asked, well, who were those fists attached to? He said, well, I couldn't see who the fists were attached to, but they were fists. Well, who was in the brawl? Well, it was black and Latinos. Well, what happened to the white guy that this whole thing started behind? He never saw the white guy, you know, and it was only two people. It was Oscar and I forget his name right at the moment, but they were in a headlock. He actually had Oscar in a headlock, and as they broke apart because the train was so crowded, the white boy walked in a different direction. Oscar went back over there to his friends, and they were like, "Man, you all right? You know this. You know, Ryan Coogler did a great job of portraying what happened on that platform." The white guy that was in the so-called wrestling match with Oscar came to the court and testified that he didn't have no problem with Oscar, and the people that he feared the most was the police. And yes, I did put him in a headlock, but that was it. And so, of course, that was gone. So the white guy was testifying that he saw all these folks throwing punches, but he couldn't identify who was throwing punches. He never identified Oscar as one of those who was throwing punches. He just said that all he saw was fists flying, and they didn't have no bodies. He didn't say it like that, but he might as well said that because he didn't see who the fist was attached to.
Yeah, and just think, the only bullet that was flying around there endangering this child came from the people he called to come in.
Exactly.
I really hope that when you have this this training, this forum and training, these workshops at the Doolittle Community Center there in Las Vegas, which, by the way, is over 1950 North J Street, Las Vegas, Nevada. I really hope when you have this, that one of the things people, I guess everyone there probably already knows, is there's no point in calling the police anymore in this country. To call the police, to invite them into your life, and even if your house is robbed, if your car is robbed, the first thing they're going to do is run you for warrants. They come into contact with you, and you put your life at risk. You put your family's life at risk, and your neighbors, and who knows what's going to happen. You're inviting a couple of guys with guns, like you said, they could have just had some kind of crazy incident where they're chasing some guy, and they're all pumped up now, and they're all on steroids. Why would you ever call these people? They've never helped me once. Every time I've called them, I've never got any help from these guys. I get an attitude, and insulted and rude. And then they want to check me for warrants to find out, if I got a warrant. They make a job. Nice quick arrest tonight. So I hope you teach that.
Can I just kind of add a little clarity to that, too?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if many heard about the story called Barbecue Becky in Oakland, who called the police on the black guys. That was actually a black family, I should say, that was barbecuing in the park, like we always do. caused a major storm. Tamir Rice, as you know, was not a commuter, but a white guy that happened to see him playing with a toy gun,
little kid,
and called
12.
the police and said this was a man with a gun, and the police come in within seconds, kill poor Tamir Rice. Let's look at Walmart. John Crawford's in there getting ready to buy a BB gun, and some white patron in the Walmart called and said there's a black guy in Walmart walking around with a weapon. Police come into Walmart and kill poor John Crawford. These stories are just facts. You know, white folks today seem to utilize the police to inflict pain, if not murder, black people on a regular and consistent basis. There needs to be a law put in place that if a white person calls the police on somebody black that just happened to be sitting in their car, and then that person is killed, and they allege that that person was not only sitting in their car, but they appear to be getting ready to rob somebody, you know, just a blatant lie to bring the police, right? And then that young man is killed, they should be held accountable for that murder. You know what I'm saying? Because if I'm in a robbery with a friend of mine and he kills someone, I'm going to get that murder charge.
No, I hear you. If you're in commission of a felony and a death takes place, even if it's a car accident, whatever, you got a murder charge, you know, or for anyone. Even later on that day, by the way, I can do a drug deal with you in the afternoon, and later on that day you go kill somebody, I could still catch a murder charge on that. So people need to be aware of that too. But don't involve the police. If you can avoid the cops, just avoid the cops. Now, we're going to take a little commercial break.
Oh, one more piece of stat that I should give. Yeah. Most of the shootings today by police officers are really people that are in a mental crisis, in a mental crisis state. And the family always calls the police and asks the police to help them at that moment in time because their loved one is really at a state that they feel they might need some help. Not some help where the police come, but more medical help, right? But the police shows up. They kill this young man or female that's in a mental crisis space. The mother or the father or some family member made the call, and now they got to witness the loved one be murdered. And so, yes, when you call the police for a situation that requires a medical team, chances are your loved one is going to be killed. And you're not really calling the police. The police is dispatched to the scene.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, we solve every single problem in our suicide, attempted suicide. We solve everything by calling the cops. We need, and you should have Norm Stamper come down to do one of your. He's the former police chief down there in Seattle, who's now he wants to revamp the whole police system. And we did a whole hour about this, talking about, you know, when you have a mental health crisis or you're having a fight with your landlord or an argument with someone, the last thing you don't have to call cops with guns to show up. No. That's not what we need. We need civilians to be showing up to these events and trying to keep the peace, like we had in the old days. You had the elders of the village, the parish priest. That's who you went to for help. And then with this roving bands of armed men showing around to settle problems. Anyway, we got to take a commercial break before I get too upset here. We're with Cephus Johnson. Yeah, Cephus Johnson. It's a tragic story, man. But it's so absurd the way we live our lives here, and we just allow it. Cephus Johnson, his Uncle Bobby, the uncle of Oscar Grant. A couple of websites you want to check out while we're taking our commercial break. I know everybody loves to complain about the commercials. LoveNotBloodCampaign.org and FU4JNetwork.org. And that's for this forum and this workshop with all these great speakers he was telling us about that are going to be held here in Las Vegas at the Doolittle Center there, the 27th and the 28th of September. We'll be right back after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with pure soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. Order today at PureSoapFlakes.com, GreenHome.com, Amazon.com, or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
Hey you, podcast listener, this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here today with Cephus Johnson, better known as Uncle Bobby. He's the uncle of Oscar Grant. And he's telling us about what happened to his nephew there, Oscar Grant, at the Bart Station over there in San Francisco, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And check out his website. The websites he's associated with here is lovenotbloodcampaign.org. And the other one is FU4, the number 4, jnetwork.org. And both of these, you can get all the information you want about this political, this forum and workshop at the Doolittle Community Center here in Las Vegas, Nevada, on the 27th and the 28th of September, the 27th and the 28th of September. Now, Mr. Johnson, obviously, okay, this tragic accident happened. So as soon as the authorities and the superior officers, all this, and saw this video and saw what went on down there and spoke to all the witnesses, obviously these two officers here, Meselian and Perone, is that Meselian?
Meserly and then Officer Peroni.
Well, they were charged, right?
Right. So, of course, Officer Peroni was never charged.
Oh.
He actually got away with it. But so that the listeners can know, historically, what happened, the California state has never, ever had a police officer arrested, charged, convicted for any murder of a person of color. So for the first time in California state history, behind the movement for Oscar Grant and seeking justice, there was a movement called the Oscar Grant Movement. We were able to secure, for the first time in California state history, an officer arrested, charged, convicted, and sent to jail. But let me clarify how he went to jail. The Meserly only did 11 months. He was charged for involuntary manslaughter, where he got the low term of 2 years, and then he got 2 days served for every day he was already in jail, reduced his time down to 11 months, so he did not have to go to prison. He was really sentenced to prison, but he never went. But for the listeners to know, the jury came back with a guilty verdict on the gun enhancement charge. There's an enhancement charge that says that if you kill someone with a weapon, that you are held accountable with an additional 10 years. And so the jury found him guilty on the gun enhancement charge, but also found him guilty on involuntary manslaughter. But the judge, Judge Robert Perry, claimed that he erred with his instructions to the juror, causing some confusion, and therefore he took the gun enhancement off the table. So that reduced his time automatically from 10 years, taking it off. And then he told us we had a right to appeal it. And then he gave him involuntary manslaughter, the low term of 2 years, and again, 2 days served for every day in jail, reduced his time down to 11 months. That's why he only did 11 months. He only did 11 months in the men's L.A. County jail. He didn't go to prison. He was really babied and ate steaks, and for all we know, probably went home while he served his time. You know, that's just the reality of it. And it wasn't like he was punished for the murder of Oscar Grant. They had to do something because the city of Oakland, if I could give a backdrop really quick to help the listeners understand. So on January 1st, 2009, it was almost 10 years, many years later from what happened with Rodney King on video. So Oscar was the flashpoint of the movement that we see begin to take place in the United States. So during the Oscar Grant movement, of course, it morphed into the Occupy Oakland or Occupy movement. Many of those that was with the Oscar movement eventually became part of the Occupy movement. And, of course, eventually Occupy movement morphed into what we call today the Black Lives Matter movement. All the founders in the Black Lives Matter movement come out of the Oscar Grant movement. Patrice Colliers, Alicia Garza, both from Oakland, California, with Patrice actually L.A., but a lot of time in Oakland. Alicia from Oakland. And Oprah, who is actually out of New York, good friends with them, know Oakland well. But anyway, they wrote a love letter to black folks, and that's how Black Lives Matter came into existence. My point is that Oscar was a flashpoint of this new civil rights movement that began to happen in the 21st century. And that happened on January 1st, 2009. And as we know, since Oscar's murder, over 25,000 more black and brown folks has been killed by the police since Oscar's murder. You know, and if we really compare it to the lynching that took place between 65 or 85, 1880, 1895. I got my numbers wrong, so I'm sure some of the listeners can see this for themselves. But I'm just going to kind of paraphrase it. From 1895 until 1964, there were 3,440 lynchings that took place, averaging a little less or maybe maybe a week. If I got my numbers right. I used to know the math of this. But today, we're averaging 3 folks or American citizens killed by the police every day of the year, 3 a day. On the average, we have between 1,000 and 1,500 people killed every year by the police. That means it's 3 a day. So to me, it's much more heinous with these killings that are taking place by the police than it was during the time of lynching. But the sad part, in the time of lynching, no one's ever found guilty except for one man, and that was in the latter days of the lynching, where he was found he had murdered or lynched like 22 black men. And he eventually, I forget his name. I mean, historically, you can Google this and test my knowledge and find out this information for yourself. But my point is this. Police violence has really become known because of the new technology that we have with the cell phone. Now, we know it's always been happening, but the question is, how much has it been happening in the past versus how much has been happening today? Because we don't have the numbers in the past of murders that was taking place by the police before Oscar, but what we do have is the numbers of how many people have been killed since Oscar. and we're averaging 3 a day for the last 10 years plus. And so that's telling us that if we times that by 10, almost 2,000 a year, that's 20-some thousand folks being killed since Oscar's murder. We could name them: Eric Gardner, Sandra Bland. We can talk about Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Ramali Graham, Oscar Grant. I mean, I could go on and on and on with the names, because this is just real reality that we're dealing with.
So now you're devoting your life now.
Share that.
Yeah, thank you. You're devoting your life now to changing the legislation too. Your SB 14-21. What's going on with that?
Oh, okay. So right before I introduced the listeners to SB 1421, which is the right to know, in the state of California, of course, I've come to realize that there's going to be various levels to bring real systemic change. Some, are going to be those that feel like throwing a brick through a window. And then there's others that's going to feel like constant protest. And then we got those that's going to be sitting at the table with legislators hoping to bring change. I don't criticize any aspect, but I do participate specifically in the protest and the legislative cycle. So in 2015, we got AB 71 passed, which is the use of force data collection, because we've been saying that people have been getting killed and we've been given these numbers, but no one have ever collected the data to know what the numbers are. So we forced the state of California Department of Justice to begin collecting the data on the type of use of force that's been used on people that's been dying in the state of California. And so we got that passed in 2015. Then we got in 2016 AB 953, which is the Racial Identification Profiling Act, because we wanted to know that if a young man is stopped because he got a bad taillight, was he profiled? And if he was profiled, what is his survival rate of that stop? And we got the data to show that it's unbelievable what our survival rate is just because of a bad taillight. And then, of course, just last year, we got AB 748, which is the audio-video release within 45 days, because we know a lot of times they have the video, but they don't let the family see it for 4, 5, 6 years. So we made the argument and was able to get the legislation passed that now agencies are required to release that video or audio recording, and if not, we can sue them. And so, of course, we're still in battle with that because, this is the first year. For whatever reason, the police don't like to abide by the laws that are passed, but they want us to abide by them, but they don't want to abide by them. In addition to that 748, we got SB 1421 passed, which is the right to know, which is real critical because to me, it's a transparency legislation, but it's also a backdoor accountability piece, meaning that the police officers today, anyone in the state of California or anyone in the United States can make a public records request to a policing agency of a particular officer that have been involved in either sexual crimes, and if so, you get the right to see his record with a sustained finding. If he's been involved in falsifying investigative reports, you have a right to know about how often and what he falsified. You also have the right to know today if an officer has been involved in the shooting, whether he killed or not. So with those 4, we get to know what kind of officers exist in our community. And believe this, on January 1st, 2019, when that became law, they fought for the first 5 months, almost 6 months, in not trying to be obedient to that law, and they finally lost, and now they are required to give up their information. So once we won in the court of them fighting not to obey the law, I made an immediate public records request concerning the murder of my nephew, and what came back to me was just unbelievable. During the time period that we thought Mesley had a bad relationship with black men, wasn't near as bad. I mean, it's 3 times as bad today what we knew then. We knew then was only 5 incidents before he murdered Oscar. I'm sorry, 4 incidents before he murdered Oscar Grant. His first year there, he beat up a young man. Second year there, he beat up another young man, black man. Third year, not even third year, and this is all in the same year now, because he only was at the Bart police station at the max almost 3 years. So he had 5 incidents of altercation with young black men before he killed Oscar Grant. Then he kills Oscar Grant. But 10 years later, when I get my public records request, I find out that he had 7 use of force incidents before he murdered Oscar, all in the same year.
Wow.
Now, if we had mechanism in place to be proactive to deal with these type of officers that have this history of blatantly abusing their power on people of color, we could now begin to maybe alleviate some of these murders that we see happening with these bad acting police officers in process. So just this year, on August the 19th, we officially got the bill signed into law that goes into effect in 2020, January 1st, called AB 392, which is the use of, is called the California Act to Save Lives. The California Act to Save Lives has changed the reasonable standard to necessary. And then we also included in that legislation the ability to take the totality of the incident that occurred before the shooting occurred to be investigated to see if there was some criminal negligence involved in the totality of the event. And if so, we now have the ability to charge an officer criminally negligent in that murder and also force them now to consider using de-escalation tactics. This just got signed into law by California Governor Gavin Newsom on August 19th. It was a big historical ceremony that just took place because the statute that the police in the state of California used to justify the killing that they were killing us by was a statute that was from 1872. So imagine the spirit when that statute came into existence, and they were still allowing that same spirit of that statute to exist today. We just ended that. And that's why California is one of the most killing states in the United States. More people are killed in the state of California than any other state in this country. And it's been that way for years. We average 150 to 175 California civilians killed by the police on a regular, consistent basis every single year. This is what the use of force data collection, AB 71, tells us. The Racial Identification Profiling Act is telling us the same thing because of the biases that is exhibited through these police stops that take place and then the murders that occur behind a bad taillight stop. So to kind of dove back to your question about 1421, that in itself, the right to know, helps us begin to identify these problematic officers. And then we can begin to take some proactive action to deal with these type of officers, whatever that may incur that we can do. But one aspect of it I think that's as critical is that if an officer is involved in a shooting, and we happen to have the records that he's been involved in 2 other shootings prior to this most recent shooting, and the district attorney fails to file charges against this officer instead of just simply stating it was a justifiable shooting, because that's all they always say. Now we got a target to really launch a campaign against, and that would be that district attorney for failing to file charges against an officer that was involved in an unjustifiable shooting. To me, that in itself will force these DAs to consider what their career path may look like versus making the decision because this officer, you know him, whether you want to stand behind his non-guilty self and risk your career because I'm coming after you.
Yeah, we can't forget, too, the supervisors and the sergeants, too, if they're aware of a cop having 7 violations prior and they've done nothing about it, too, there has to be some kind of accountability and consequences for them as well. Mr. Johnson, we're totally out of time, though, but you got like 1 minute. So you want to tell people how they can find you?
Wow.
What do you want to do?
Yes, so definitely go to the website. On the wwebsite, you can definitely reach out to Love Not Blood Campaign, us. and see the work that we're doing. Also, Families United for Justice, which is fu4j.org website. You can go there and see about the conference and just take a look at it. And if you're an impacted family and you're hearing my voice, definitely reach out. We had to close the registration because we got so many this year. But reach out, contact us, and hopefully we can figure out how to maybe bring you also to the conference.
Yeah, I'm going to get in there. I'll get in there. You have to lock me out of there. You can't keep me out of there. No, wait. Now, the people who attend these conferences, they're all actual victims, or it's a general public too that just wants to be aware?
Primarily, everybody that's going to be at the workshop. We already got over 150-some families coming to the conference, so it's going to be everybody that's impacted. But the community forum that's going to happen on Saturday will be open to the community to come and hear, like Chase Iron Eyes, a Native representative, John Burris, a civil rights attorney, Patrice Correa, founders of Black Lives Matter, Dr. Malena Abdullah, also of the Justice League, Black Lives Matter, and a professor and director of Pan-African Studies, Yanajwa Longwolf, who is a Native sister but Black, really representing our Native community families. We got Sam Samway, who wrote and built Mapping the Police, another data mechanism that tells us where all the shootings takes place and what legislation and things that we can put together to get it passed. Dante Berry, who is the founder of the Million Hoodie March based on what happened to Trayvon Martin, and then we have a surprise guest athlete speaker that would be a part of the panel. We're just kind of informed to keep his name under wraps until the actual day of the event. But, this is an athlete, activist, attorney panel that will be speaking to the community, and we'll definitely be taking questions. It's going to be a powerful experience, a powerful panel, and a powerful weekend.
Okay, Uncle Bobby, Cephus Johnson, thank you so much, and thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me, Ed. Appreciate it.
All right, so then we had Cephus Johnson, the uncle of Oscar Grant here. And once again, lovenotbloodcampaign.org and Families United for Justice, the number 4, fu4jnetwork.org. And this is at the Doolittle Community Center, the 27th and the 28th here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And now a word from our sponsors. Emailrevealer.com. People ask me all the time, hey, Ed, are you still a private investigator? I sure am. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, where you give us your spouse's email address. We trace it back to online dating websites, catch them cheating online. Email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat, locate his hidden assets, locate his hidden bank accounts, find his current place of employment, and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages. Create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com, 800-572-9762. OppermanReport.com. Hey, do you like what you're hearing? Do you like the work that you see us doing here at Opperman Report? You can support that work by becoming a member at OppermanReport.com. And as you have access to over 200 exclusive shows and interviews that you can't find on YouTube or Spreaker or iHeart or iTunes or KYAH. You can't find them anywhere else online, exclusive to our member sections, to our members. Also, too, there's images, videos, documents, court docs, a lot of content there at OppermanReport.com. And it's the memberships that support the Opperman Report and allow us to play these shows for free on Friday nights and Saturday nights on all the stations you hear us on. You can also make a donation at OppermanReport.com. If you want to support the show and become a member, I can give you a discount. I'll give you 13 months for $65 if you email me directly at OppermanReport@gmail.com. And don't forget, you can hear your ad played here on the Opperman Report, reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis because the show is repeated every day all over the world. Contact me at OppermanReport@gmail.com and I'll give you a good deal on advertising rates.